a reminder, we are hosting our CDMP for certification course from the 9th of May for 4 days. Please, if you're interested, to get onto the path and start the process of certification, as well as just reviewing the DMBOK and going through that. It's an overview of the DMBOK. It's a challenging 4 days because there's so much content, but you have the best of the best presenting and facilitating and answering questions, Veronica Diesel. And I know that she's just finished up today, so she's pretty tired or pretty moch, depending on who's listening. A heavy 23 people in the class this week, so I can imagine all the questions, and it must have been awesome. So that was pretty exciting. So yeah, that's coming up in May, and then we're targeting our data architecture. That's how to plan data and how to analyze data, data warehouse and BI, big data, data science as well. We'll just confirm those dates are happening depending on the class size. Awesome.
Okay, so, yeah,
okay.
The mentee, Paul.
Okay, cool. All right, so how to productize data overview. Thank you, Howard. Looking forward to it, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, great. So I was talking a little bit to Yolanda earlier on, and I was just saying how this has become a really critical part of our business, certainly a part of data management, and I think it's one of the exciting parts where hopefully as data governance you can enable the business and start to bring about value, rather than really just the controlling and making sure everything's done. But it's always good to set these things up and have the guardrails in place before we start running away. And I'll share with you some of the challenges that people are facing. So last week we spoke as if we were data managers on how we would manage products, data products. This week, we'll be talking as if we are a data citizen, and we'll be defining product value. And I must admit, this has been a really challenging part. It was quite easy to say, oh, right, you just got to do this, this, and this, and you've got to set up the controls. But this thing of actually defining value, and it takes me back to the Doug Laney presentation where he really said right at the end, and I felt bad. I know I apologized on LinkedIn. He said, if you're not teaching and making your business aware of the value of data and building data products, then you're doing them a disservice. And I said on the post that I honestly hadn't done it. And we mentioned it, but never really got them to focus on it. So this was part of the reason of starting this. The other reason was I started doing some of it in Saudi, and I'll show you a little bit from Saudi when we get there. So I'm going to go through the essential concepts pretty quickly, and then I'm going to jump over to the data citizen just as a review. If there's any of you that would like more details, please shout. Last week we did the essential concepts, and I also did a case study on Modelware in terms of what data products we are looking at and we would present, and what's important to us. So there's a lot of detail that happened last week, and if you do want to check it out, just or ask questions, happy to share that with you. Okay, so the essential concepts of data products and data platforms. So there's two aspects here. It's the product itself, and then it's the platform that it's going to operate it. And I did share this last time, where these are the trends that will dominate 2022. And right in the middle here is accurately valuing data products. This is the area that I'd like to focus on. These are the comments in terms of what needs to be done, and this is one of the comments that in that post that actually referenced Doug Laney. He said the greatest success that a chief data officer has is when they actually productize or commercialize their data in some way. Okay, and of course he's got a whole lot of different options in terms of how you can do it. It's not just all about charging money. There's different scenarios of exchanging services and that for data. It doesn't always have to be a money part of it. But that's, and we're really looking forward to Doug Laney's book. He's about to release something like 200 business use cases of how they were able to help people establish business data products. Then the next part is understanding how to bake data into existing products, and this was for me really important. So just as a simple scenario, Modelware does advisory work, and we also do training, and we do everything from fundamentals to how-to courses and things like that. And it's a case of, okay, that's great, but where does the data product come in that gets baked into that? And so we shared how we have been collecting and doing it for almost CPD, which is your continuous professional development. We just collect the attendance registers. So each time you attend a session on Teams, or you do a training, or we do case studies, then we just record that you've attended. And nice for Teams is that they actually give us the amount of time that you spent attending. So we can say, well, you only spent 5 minutes or 1 minute or an hour and a half. And this, what I like here is that leveraging that data to connect with the customers. So once you've got that data, how do you connect with the customers? How do you give them more value for their product and for the time they're spending? So this was a review on education trends, basically to say that half of today's tasks will be expected to be automated by 2055. That doesn't mean that, oh, shucks, we can now get rid of everybody. It actually means we need to reskill and upskill our workers. Okay, so I think there were some embarrassing stories about one of the banks that tried to retrench a whole lot of people, and the SASPO union went to them and said, you haven't spent any money on upskilling these people and you want to retrench. So they actually had to withdraw the retrenchment, and there's a process of upskilling their workers. Then the other element that I liked was 70% of the transformation programs fail due to insufficient skills and capabilities. And there was a great LinkedIn post, I know Paul's got it available, where the Capitec CEO was saying how important it is, almost the skills competition that the country's in, and that's very critical. Okay, so how do we effectively, what's an effective capability building formula? And we improve our transformation by a factor of up to 4-fold. So digital transformation, all of these big transformation programs, we improve it by having the appropriate education. Now, this is an example of what I've been working on, slogging on, trying to get my story together in terms of how we do this. This is part of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. NDMO is the National Data Management Office. It's really nice to see that it's coming down from the prince. Everything's regulated, everything's defined, and this is what they have published. So you have to establish data value realization. You have to build your strategy, and then as part of execution, what is the revenue generating elements from your data product? How do you do your pricing? How do you calculate it? What is your charging? And then we go into data value realization and use case monitoring. And then we go into data value realization KPI. So how do we actually measure that? Sorry, Rob, I'm not sure in terms of the baking in. Is this? Help me there, Rob. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, this baking data into existing. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, it does include a recipe, and I've got one of those recipes for you. So I can show you how the data product recipe I've put together. Okay. So nice to see that from a ministry point of view, a government ministry point of view, every single ministry has to have a plan. They have to start doing this. And the important thing is what they are saying is that even before you start with open data, which is a lot of the times where the ministry focuses on, you need this sorted out. Okay, so you need to have your data value realization plan defined before you start publishing open data. And to me, that makes sense because it's a little bit like the freemium model. What's free, and then when do you start paying? Okay, they have to do the same. What's open, and what do you start paying for? So that's been an interesting challenge that we're working through. Okay, so this is the recipe. This is the recipe for you, Rob, in terms of how we go about it. And so we define, we use we do value positioning. This is our first step. Then we do the value discovery. We then agree on the value, and then we look at value recognition. So those are the high-level steps. This is what we spent last week talking about. I don't want to go into too much detail now, and I will look at the detail of what the data citizen needs to do. Unless there's some questions from anybody. Has anyone got any questions? Just as a quick recap on this. Emil, you comfortable? Yolanda, is that sort of makes sense in terms of how you guys seeing yourself initiating these data products? It's of course, it's first of all, what are almost the customer journeys that people are going on with for the business? What is the business value chain? How do we measure the value from a business point of view? And then how do we link our customer journeys in? And once we've got our customer journey in that understands it from the business products, then we start looking at baking it in the data products. We then build a data value chain. We then define how we're going to do the valuation. And it would be interesting to hear anyone who's got a valuation technique already defined. Laney has published a few. There's other people doing open data that have also got some market-related information. So there are a few techniques out there. I haven't seen a whole lot of people mastering those techniques. From there, we go into how do we measure it from a business point of view. So how do we agree the value that the customer or the consumer is going to get from this data product? How do we build a taxonomy in terms of what is the dimensions, the groups, and the metrics, and then how do we calculate it? How do we go about calculating it? Once we've got this, then we go into setting up the data platform, the data as a service, where these data products are going to live. And part of that is designing the product hierarchy, where we're going to get external data from, what services are we going to apply, enriching that we're going to do when we get the data, and then what is the user experience of working with this platform. Okay, everyone's very quiet. I had lots of questions when I started, so I was sort of assuming that you guys will just ask, even if it's the most basic form. That's still fine. So value chain. Let's talk quickly about a data value chain. There's basically three main elements to a value chain playbook. You're collecting data, you're creating insights, and then you're creating value for the business, that value creation. So that means you're delivering the information to the consumer. If you're lucky, you can deliver more insights and knowledge that you get from it. We then focus on the consumer and the value of the consumer. Now, I've got in there just an acronym. This is jobs to be done. So I certainly see it as part of the customer journey map. We define what jobs the customer needs to do. Okay. Here is my data product structure. It's actually quite nice to think of it like that. And when you think of it in these different layers, and I do need to give recognition to Infotech. They were the ones that got me going on this. They basically had this diagram here, and then I started putting the pieces together in terms of how I would apply it to myself or to a ministry, whatever it is. But nice to see this product hierarchy. Can you see here where we have what can we provide as detailed data service? What can we aggregate and provide at an aggregate level? What visualization can we provide the people with, where they want to see, for example, if we were to do I showed this as a case study, what we can do is when we've built all the data from a training point of view, we can actually give people a CV. So they've certified in this, they've done these webinars, they've attended these conferences, and you can, and of course, you've got some competencies that you've actually performed these tasks in your workplace, you can actually put a CV together. And then one can look at insights and advice, and that would be your career advice. Where do you want to get to? Where's your desired state? And how do we get to that scenario? So those are examples of these different layers, and they're quite different products. They're not the same. Okay. Okay, so that's just the breakdown of the structures, who are the external providers, who's going to consume the data, and what are the data layers. And of course, these things on the side there where you've got sharing agreements, you've got exchange, data exchange agreements, you've got external data, and then we've got value-added data, and then of course, product ownership and governance. So who owns the product and who's going to take responsibility for that? Okay. Now, the valuation is quite challenging. The actual calculating the value of a data product, it's important to, first of all, define your dimensions. And what is important to notice here is that these dimensions are not the same for everybody. I found an example, a research paper that had an example of Fitbit, and they had things like usage, accessibility of the daily health and exercise, and then they also had economic cost and valuations. Okay, so this is a taxonomy that they've put together: dimensions, metric groups, and metrics. And I'll show you an example of that. And then modeling the value and creating value according to business decisions. Understand the questions that we need to answer to the customers and identify the jobs that they want doing. Okay, so I like doing that in my customer journey map. I'm not sure if you guys have got any other examples, but when we put this journey together that a customer will take, let's take a data professional. When you start out, you may be a data citizen. Then you get some levels of certification, you become a professional, and then a data specialist, a data thought leader, going to a data executive. There's that sort of journey or the stages that a professional may go through. Okay, then we quantify the value. And once you've quantified the value, you can now start to adapt your value chain. So should we look for better data source that gives us more richer data? And I can see that, for example, when I put mine together, I'm looking at a competency model, and I don't have a lot of competencies models defined for all the different knowledge areas of the DM block. So I'm running short of some of my data elements that I can get. So I have to keep on improving that. Okay. All right, so now you've got the data product, you've got the valuation on how you're going to evaluate it. Now it's about implementing it. And this is, again, from Infotech, where they've got those diagrams together. This is the playbook that they put together. I've added some elements to it. And these are the areas that I've added. One of the things I noticed is when they just do a data product design, and then they go into exchanging data. Okay. Whereas I thought, shucks, we're actually missing privacy and impact and ethics impact assessment. They're not asking the questions. And then there's a feasibility study. Must we check if this one is too difficult? Is it not giving the right value back? And if it's too difficult with low value, then don't go at it right now. Rather, prioritize the ones that have high impact and are feasible, have high feasibility, and that's when you get your data product prioritization. So you're going to need that when you start the exercise. And now when I'm starting with these ministries in Saudi, they've got a whole lot of data, but where do they start? And it's almost starting from nowhere, and we have to start to get going. Okay. All right, so what I have done is I've added a whole lot of reading material. These are research papers. For example, here's the data value chain, the 9 factors of the framework, and I'll take you through that. the different terminology on how to value data, building a customer journey map, looking at knowledge, skills, and competencies, doing business measurement, upskilling, and I'll talk about these two today, which is the data value realization traps and business process optimization. So those are the things that we'll focus on today. All right. Okay, so any questions? If I can, I'm happy if you guys would like to ask a question before we continue. Are you comfortable? Or am I losing everybody? I get the feeling I may be losing everybody.
No questions, Howard.
Excellent. Thanks, Sunita. Okay, great. Sunita, does it mean that you're comfortable? Is this something that you're looking at as well? Is the type of thing that you're working through at the moment, or it's it's new and you're going to have to spend some time digesting it?
No. So it's not something that I'm currently working on. So I'm not sure if you are aware, but I recently changed jobs.
Oh,
So
no.
Thank you. So I'm no longer with Capitec. I'm
Right.
doing data governance. I'm an information management specialist now with Direct Access. And my focus is on records management and privacy.
Okay. They were really good at records management. They actually gave a talk one month on records management, Direct Access.
Okay, wonderful.
Nice. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is now what I've got here is I've now specifically on that playbook, I just want to focus on how does the data citizen contribute to this playbook? And these sort of areas in blue are the ones that are flying around, those are the ones that I believe the data citizen needs to take responsibility for. Okay, so they need to help initiate the data value chain. Not all of it, but they basically have to say, if we add this data to our existing business products, we can establish more customer connection. Okay, I think that's critical. And sometimes when I look at the Infotech one, they actually say start at the data product and then work your way to the value. That is a way of doing it. They've done it like that. I suppose what I like to do is start from the business side and connect myself backwards rather than going forwards. I'd love to hear what you guys feel. So I like to start with a data citizen, someone who's an SME in the business, and they're going to say, I've got this existing product. Now, what happens if I do this? And we've been looking from a training point of view. There's always this demand to go to micro learning. I can't spend 5 days on a course. How can I learn in smaller chunks? And they've got some really interesting criteria in terms of micro learning. One of that is doing an assessment before you learn, then do a 5-minute learning, and then do an assessment afterwards. And then you've got to repeat this as you go. So lots of requirements there from a data point of view. Let's say my name's Emil, and I now have to go and deliver a data product or design data products for customers. Quickly give me some sharp, intense learning on building a data product, and then I can continue with my job. That's the sort of micro learning approach. And so this is how we go about it. So first of all, identify how do we connect with the customer. Once you've identified that, you can have the data engineers and the governance people saying, okay, what's the right source? How do we deliver it? How do we get it there? What's the platform? All of those more technical type of stuff. Whilst they are doing that, you've got to go and start to quantify the value that you could deliver to the consumer or to the market. And these are the different, you'll do the value proposition using the jobs to be done. And questions, you can then build these dimensions and groups, and then the value calculation. And once that's done, you would define the persona hierarchy, the product hierarchy, meaning what can you give at a detailed level, what can we do at an aggregated level, what can we do as visualizations, and what can we do as AI insights and findings or knowledge. Okay. All right, so here is a summary of our data citizen. This is what the SMEs have to get sorted out. Okay, so the first thing is part of the product establishment, the product platform. understand the personas, the spectrums, the journey maps, and the product layers. That's what that is all about. Defining a data product that supports and is baked into a business product. So how do I get more customer connection to the product that it's currently using? And then what does my data value chain flow look like? And then how do we measure it with the proposition, the structure of the value, and analytics? Okay. So before taking you into the hectic detail in the Excel and things like that, I just wanted to show you this. I found this fascinating when I was trying to go through it. I'm sure you guys all know, I find it hard to pronounce his name, Skimazo. He's done that big data MBA, and he did a really nice data value realization trap. So can you see he's got 6 traps? You can be caught in the analytics chasm. You can be falling into the data swamp. You can be chasing technology. You can float away overinflated promises. And this is what I'm concerned about is, I can go in there and say, you're going to make millions, but what's realistic? And because I don't have enough data or an experience on how much I can derive from this value product, I'm a little bit shaky in this area. And of course, that leads to the plane of career limiting moves where your career goes to die. Especially if you're a consultant or a thought leader and you go and tell them to go this way and they don't, and they follow you blindly and you don't get the results that they want. Okay. So now it's this envisioning on business support. So I brought these traps together, and there are avoidances, and that's what I liked, to avoid the analytics chasm. You need to focus on exploiting the economic value of data. Instead of falling into the data swamp, how do we build a collaborative value creation platform? That's where data as a service comes along. Technology, stay away from chasing the big data and all the different analytics that you can do, and focus on the business outcomes. Be careful of overinflated promises. Get to your value engineering, pragmatic value engineering. Anyone done any value engineering? Rob, I don't know if you've done any of it. Have you been exposed to engineering value for organizations? Okay, not answering. And then to get around the career limiting moves, we got to keep on envisioning the business. Okay, so these are the challenges he put forward in terms of crossing the chasm. I tend to think that I'm not that convinced that we need to cross this. I actually think you need to get rid of both of them and apply both of them to your analytics, your data product. And of course, analytics can do the views of your the visualizations. BI can visualize pretty good with a dashboard. So I don't think we need to take out traditional analytics. I think we must bring them together. I like this one in terms of how do we see a collaborative value creation platform? Yes, there's the data lake, but what's important about the data lake is understanding what business opportunities we have to link the data and to improve. So improving effectiveness. And I really like this view of, when you look at this, this is all about helping the business achieve what they need to do. Okay, so the next one is doing focusing on the business outcomes, doing a reality check in terms of what's the business potential, what are the implementation risks, implementation considerations. And so we're trying to find this optimal mix of high business value and high implementation feasibility. You need to be doing something like that. That's part of documenting your use cases. And of course, what I like to do is document the customer journey map and the data products that support it, and then use those as my use cases. I find use cases as a very high definition. I prefer to be a little bit more detailed as to what I'm going after. I'm going after what is my data product, not just what is my use case. Okay. This is the one where we have to be careful, and we can miss these opportunities either by not jumping on board or spending too much time in the hype cycle. We just have to be focused on that. And to do that, we need good value engineering. I'll show you some of that. And then here is the product prioritization. Okay. So I think a lot of us have done it, but what I like about this is it's all about how do we give value back to the business, increase customer visits, reduce churn, improves cross-sell, and elements like that. Now, if it's linked to the customer journey map, I think you start connecting with your marketing people a lot quicker, and I think there's a more tangible effect. Okay. So what I liked about what Bill did was he actually linked this whole thing to data management. Now, I've got a different route in terms of building these data products. I don't think it's that important. I just think what is important is how we do this together. And I like this, basically this diagram where I could say, okay, this is what the data manager is responsible for. These are the areas that my data citizen must look at. He must look at value engineering and product development. These are where the data professionals work in, and this is the area for the data executive. So I'm sort of hoping that makes sense to you. Yeah, we've got all these paths and journeys and things like that. Who must play what roles, and where do we fit together in this whole journey that we establish? Okay. All right. So let's start to get down to reality. Let's start to get down to actually defining how this whole thing comes together. I do have a spreadsheet that I'm happy to share with anybody. I know Don has been working on it quite extensively. He's presenting in 2 weeks' time on his data value product. So I'd like to see what comes out of there. But remember, we broke it up into collecting the data, creating the insights, and then creating the value. Okay, so this is how I've done it for Modelware. I didn't want to use the ministry's data, so I said, let me give an example with ours. As training people, we want to do and deliver better knowledge, better skills, better attitude, competencies. Now, when you bring those 4 together, there's something called KSCA, knowledge, skills, competencies, and attitude. Some people change this around to be abilities. I like the attitude approach because I can measure that, and I'll show you how I do it. And once we've got those, then we get into better learning. So this comes into this micro learning. How can I improve the customer's learning? Now that we've been going backwards and forwards, this I've certainly looked at going completely online, like the Udemy's and the CIMPs and things like that. And one of the things that I keep on rubbing up against or bashing my head against is they say that the completion rate of e-learning is very low, especially when it's long courses and things like that. And we've got some long courses. We've got some 5-day courses. If you take that onto e-learning and the guy's doing 2 or 3 hours a day, there's a long journey. Sure, Patrick, I'll send that, I'll share that with you with all the slide decks as well, where you can see it. So better learning means how can I give you learning recommendations? So if we look at your data literacy, then let's say you at a data citizen level, what's the next step to learn? Let's just give you simplistic examples. You're a data citizen, let's do the data management fundamentals. Once you've done fundamentals, let's do a specialist exam. Once you've done a specialist, let's do a business case study and an industry one. Once you've done that, and so we can give you these learning requirements. And let's say you want to be a data architect and you haven't done any master data. Okay, let's do a quick master data one. And so we can do these recommendations. That's a recommendation engine. And depending on your competency model and your job profile, we can actually say, oh, shucks, you haven't done a lot of data quality. Let me supplement your data quality. These are the things that you can do. These are the learning units. And then the next step would be career management. Okay, so if I want to get to an executive, what's my journey? And one could recommend the steps that you take. Okay. All right, so this is to give you an example of the data value chain. Okay, so this is a simplistic example. I'm looking for better knowledge management. So the way we do it, what's our data source? Our data source will be a webinar like you're on at the moment, a training course like some people have attended, or a conference. And with those, now with all the online tools, I can pick up the attendance, how many hours you attended, and then across a month, across a period, we can calculate all of this, and we can get that from Teams. So thank you very much, Teams. You've been a great help. I've put this in Power BI, and now we've got the number of knowledge hours. Okay. So what we have to be careful here is yes, I've gained knowledge, but can I recognize that knowledge? So I've listened to Veronica's 4 days on data management for certification, but can I pass the exam? Can I pass the data management certification? It's like, that's the recognized unit. The training is one thing. Yes, you get a certificate to say you've trained, but can you pass the actual course, the exam? That's when it's recognized. That's the important thing that you guys want. When you've got better learning, better career, can you get the job that you've applied for? That's the element of it. That's the thinking. Okay. Then we'll do a data analysis. So understand the time that you spent developing knowledge, in which knowledge areas, where are you strong, where are you weak, and then where's the recognition? Oh, so you've passed the CDMP certification and you got an associate pass. Oh dear. Okay. Or you failed, or oh shucks, what happened? What went wrong? And then how do we deliver it? That could be either through a smartphone. We've got Canvas learning management system, so we can say, all right, here's a new assessment that you may like to do. And the customer will then interact with us via a smartphone. And all of this leads to better knowledge management. So let me just show you what it looks like in my Excel spreadsheet. This is the Excel spreadsheet. Now it's got a whole lot of stuff, right? Here's my data value taxonomy. Okay, so this is how we measure value. So users, okay, this is how we measure quality, accuracy. This is how we measure production costs. This is how we measure process effectiveness, risk management. So this is the taxonomy. This is how I'm going to record these metrics. And now we go into my value chain. Okay, so if I just close this and I start opening up that value chain and we start looking at our data collection. So what can we collect? What data can we collect for knowledge management? There we go. That was on the screen. You've got webinars. And now if I do a skill management, what we are doing is we do, as part of the course, you do a case study. And then there's more case studies. If you'd like to do that, we would do a case study review. That will be data that goes in, and we collect it using a data scorecard. Okay, then we recognize that as how many hours did you take to develop that case study and reviews and get it polished and stuff like that. So now I can start recording the number of skilled hours that you've put together. Okay. And so from the data collection, we now go into the data analysis. Okay. So now we start analyzing the data. We start adding information to that data. From there, we start to deliver our data to the consumer. And how does the customer interact with us? So how do we deliver the data, and how does the customer interact with it? Now that's all nice. What's important here, for example, when we go down to learning management, we now want these things delivered via email or some collaboration, social networking tool to say, hey, we've just noticed we've done some analysis after you submitted your learning or whatever it is, and here is a recommendation. Again, what's important to us is whether the recommendation was accepted or not. That's how we determine that we've provided some value. Okay, so this is basically where you start, right? So these are my value propositions. Remember I said I want to improve customer lifetime, I want to improve all of this. Well, we want to improve, when you come on training, we want to improve your knowledge, we want to improve your skills, we'd love to improve your attitude, and we'd measure that by having a stakeholder review, stakeholder engagement. That's Christine who's talking next week. She showed us how to do a stakeholder engagement or a 360 review, and we can build that data in there. So I'm hoping you guys can see the value that we are promising and what we're trying to deliver. Okay, so can you see how this is extending it from just a data product? You've come on a training course, but can we take it that level further? Everyone's very quiet. Paul, do you have any questions? I feel like I'm running away and hopefully I'm not confusing everybody.
No. I think no. I don't have any questions. I was just enjoying it actually, but I also see from the comments people are getting it because they want it.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. All right. So that was the value chain. Remember, that's part of the playbook. For me, I think this is where you start on better knowledge management. Infotech says start here at your data sources and then go towards the value of data. I think you can do it either way. But what I like to do is when I'm driving this way, I'm coming at more from a data management point of view and less from a business point of view. Okay. So we'd love to hear your comments if anyone has a feeling about that. I find I had to twist that Infotech playbook around. I think I've asked a few times. All right, so that's the way I do it. I start with a value, and then I get almost the data engineering, data governance people to go backwards, and then I want the data citizen to go forwards, to go along this way. Okay. Now, guys, happy if you want to just stop and ask me to pause. It does get quite hairy from here on. Okay, so data valuation, the value measurement, this is the end result. Can I show you? This is the end result. You want to be able to publish to business. Of course, remember, overinflated promises, be careful of that. But we are saying that I can get for my knowledge data product, I believe this is the value to the business. Okay, and remember, this was a monthly snapshot. So what did you get this month? And I did that on the value taxonomy. I did it last week, where you'll take the value measurement every month. Okay, and you'll see whether you're going up or down and whether your value is deteriorating or improving. What I have noticed is that there's a big difference in value between just receiving knowledge, like now, lots of people are receiving knowledge, but when I recognize knowledge, when I actually build something, I write an assessment, I do an exam on data value realization. How do I recognize that? And then the skill. Can I do a case study? Can I do one for myself? Can I do one for a ministry? Connie, you got a question there. Starting from value, does it reduce the risk of data scientists playing around? That's definitely what I see, is a case of you could come up with all sorts of amazing values and looking at the different data, looking at the insights, but how does it connect to the business side? So yes, they could be stuck in this area over here where they start talking about what is the insights creation, but how do they connect that back to a value statement? If the value statement is not there, what is the answer to this thing? What am I looking for? So good observation, Connie. All right. Okay, so I want to be able to have a list of all of my different data products, and then of course, this is the net value of the data products for this area. Okay, this is not the net value for my training products. This is the net value for the data products, which looks exciting in terms of this scenario. Now, what I have found, and I did some research on what they ask you for market-related data. So, would they be paying more for someone with the right skills and competencies? So, I'm seeing here that I use these ratios where attitude is a lot of people say attitude is important, but a lot of times when they do the interviews, it's what is your knowledge? What is your certification? What skills do you have? What's your competency? And attitude we'll talk about later, if we ever talk about it. So I've noticed that they're not that. I mean, there's not a lot of demand for attitude and so a willingness to pay for that. Then there's lots of development around learning, micro learning, and career management. So we're seeing when we looked at some of the people asking for that, there was a lot more. These are a lot more valuable. What I can say is these don't come if you don't have those, the knowledge, skills, and competencies, and your learning path. Okay. All right. So we've sort of got that area now. Now we want to go into a bit more detail. Okay. So I wanted to just share these value dimensions. So this is obvious from a knowledge point of view. I hope it's obvious. So here is the number of active users that we have on the system. These are the number of times that number of hours that we've recorded. I use this figure over here, those 10,000 hours from, what's it? That's additional economist. What's the guy who says 10,000 hours?
Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell, that's the guy. That's the 10,000 hours. So I've used that value to scale. So now you may have 1 million hours, but we're scaling it per valuable unit to 10,000 hours. So you have to attend 10,000 webinars. Maybe not. Okay, and then what's the recognition? Of course, I have less recognition than I have learning. And then I like this in terms of my accuracy. So a lot of the times, the manner in which I collect the data, this is internal data, right? When I collect the data to say how accurate is my unit assessment, and I would do it with a survey. And now, of course, we're going to have a different thing of, oh, yes, but you only know a certain percentage of my learning. You're not picking up my other learning or my other knowledge areas. So what percentage are we? Yes, we can provide the ability to add your extra learning in, but then it's a little bit hard to see some of the recognition side of it and validate it. Accessibility, can you go and find all your hours? Can you find all your knowledge? And then can you find your recognition? Completeness, I've got as a quality area. So these are quality dimensions. Completeness means that do I have all of the data to define knowledge? Have I got data sets that are giving me all the knowledge? And at this point in time, I believe I'm sitting around about 83% of all the information I could keep about a knowledge area. Yeah, Rob, I think you're right that attitude and abilities that we, certainly from an interviewing point of view, we're not strong at collecting data around that. And it is hard because you now got to go and get stakeholders to review and give you an engagement metric and how well did you conduct yourself. Okay, coming back to the DQ, there's completeness and relevance. Relevance is how relevant is that learning towards data management and towards the things that I'm collecting. So how well can I gauge your relevant data learning? Okay, now I'll come up with an average of 79%. And this is by averaging the surveys and averaging the completeness and that. So there's a DQ average that I've got. So when you talk about a market value, what you want to do is use that DQ average to multiply it out. Okay, you want to say, oh, right, I've got this value, but I want to multiply and almost reduce it if my data quality is not 100%. This is going to have a reducing impact on me. Then when I look at the economic value, of course, there's production. So how much am I paying to acquire knowledge data from an external provider? What's the cost of my data platform? And then what's the cost of my data management maturity? Okay, have I got quality? Have I got integration, data engineering, data science, BI, all of this stuff? What is it costing me to keep my capability at a level 3 or 4 that you're talking about? Cost reduction, how am I improving efficiency? I've got cost-effective processes, I'm mitigating risks, and I'm handling change management. These 3 core areas of cost reduction. And I'll show you some of that a little bit later if we've got some time. And then this is the revenue. Okay. So in using that, I can now calculate a profit and loss for my data product, which is basically my income and minus my costs. So if we just go through that now, these are my expenses. These are my production costs, acquiring data. How do I get it? This is my income to my data product, process optimization. These are the three areas. Process effectiveness, how much did I improve the process effectiveness? How much did I reduce my risk? And how much did I improve the deal with the change management and success factors? So for example, a success factor is how well is my data product aligned to the strategy and the objectives of the business. Revenue generation, that's going to be active user billing, and then ratios from a marketing point of view. How much money am I making per learning, per KSA unit? What's been recorded, what's been recognized? How much money am I making for recommendations? What's been suggested? What's been accepted? Okay. And so here we have the income and expenditure for economic value, income minus expenses. There we've got it. And then we go to a per user unit value. Okay, I need to get to the per unit user value so that I can say, okay, how many learning units did I have? And I can multiply them out to get the data value product. Okay, so this is where it comes. There's your market-based thing. What is the usage? What am I getting per user unit? And then what does my data quality average look like? And I multiply those out. Okay, so this is basically how you do it over here. So just to give you some examples on the PowerPoint or the Excel in terms of how it works, you can see here. So for example, let's say my data quality wasn't that good. Let's say I got a level 1 on my data quality. Notice those values going down, and I got a 3 over here. Now I can do a lot to improve that metric. All right. And as I improve that metric, my net value is increasing. Okay. I can also play around with the cost of acquisition. And then what I'm doing from a market research point of view is per unit, what is the value of each recognized learning unit to the organization? Okay, so remember we said Capitec, they're saying that there's a skills war out there, and if they are improving the skills of the resources, one hopes that they're going to retain those resources. That's not always obvious, but what we are saying is the more skilled the people are, the better value they're going to get back from the business. I don't have all of those metrics right now. I got some from L&D website to talk about the improving of knowledge, and they're using something called $500 per learning unit. Okay. All right, so that's how the calculation goes. So can you see here, this is the calculation that's performed to get my knowledge hours. This is my calculation to get my recognized knowledge hours. And then this is the calculation to get the value of my knowledge data source. So these three things are picked up: the number of hours, the data quality average, and the unit for that area over there. Okay, so that's sort of pretty much where I wanted to get to. There's a question from Connie: do you incorporate valuation now into your North Star? Yes, definitely. This is what I have the North Star cake layer, where I talk about across the spectrum, what is the different areas, and then I link it to the value, and I link it to my North Star being recognized learning unit. So that's for Modelware. The North Star in Modelware was recognized learning units. So how does each one of these contribute to recognized learning units? Correct, 100%. Okay, so now once we've done all of those fancy calculations, one of the things that the data citizen must do is to say, when we did the journey map, there were some concerns that the people raised, and I'm sure you remember that Menti from last time, the type of questions that they had. As a data management professional, are my skill sets for data management still appropriate? What's happening with big data? Can I contribute as a data engineer? Is everything gone? All my BI stuff, that's all old stuff. What about the new stuff? So there's constant concerns there. How do I link the DM box to the job that I'm doing? How do I become a professional? Do I want to become a professional? What are the benefits I get from CDMP? So what we are saying is that the data products need to be able to answer these questions. So you need a visualization, and the data citizen should say this visualization answers this question. For example, a skill set, a DM skill set. If I have a competency model and I look at the learnings and I look at the things that I'm doing, I can say from the competency model that's developed from an industry, you have an 80% fulfillment of the competency model. Fantastic, well done. Your skill set's appropriate. And one can define a range as to what you find acceptable or not. Okay, so there's something from Rob. Is an individual capable of scoring well on all dimensions, or is it some of the team competency? Rob, this is a great point. I'm working with Paul and we're talking to Sanlam at the moment. We did it last year when we looked at the grads and we had a group of 10 or 12 and we did an assessment of the team in terms of how well is the grad team doing, but we can certainly take that down to how well is your sprint team doing that's delivering on data products. You can certainly bring that aggregation. That's what I refer to as an aggregated data product. Once I know your organizational structure, we can aggregate it. Paul, any comments from your side?
Yeah, 100%, Howard. Very excited to see the results this round as well. And just talking to that problem statement around how do we, I just heard it the other day, that retention issue, and came up again in that post on LinkedIn, which I've put in the chat for everybody to have a look at. Yeah. But great, looking forward to see how those results start mapping to those, answering those kind of problems as well. So as we're talking to L&D, as we're talking to various stakeholders across industry, hearing their problems and what they're facing, and then, you know, it's triggering, how do we answer that with a data product like that gap analysis between desired and required and all that. So
yeah,
very good.
Fantastic. All right, great. So that sort of brings me to the end of the presentation. So are there any questions? Are there any things that you'd like to see? How you need to use the spreadsheet? Or was it just too much information?
I must admit, we must give it a stab, yeah.
Yeah, I must admit, I did think, and I know that Doug Laney actually worked with, he's got an MBA program and working with some economists, and they busy building this value taxonomy. And I thought that was quite complicated until I started digging into it, and I was wondering if any of you have any more dimensions that I haven't looked at. One is, what is the usage of your product? What is the quality of your product, and what's the economic value of your product? And then when you bring in market research, you can say, well, if I've got this sort of value per learning unit or per data unit, whatever it is, Fitbit's got steps, sleep hours, things like that. And they sold it based on that. So Infotech's got a nice example of how they helped Fitbit quantify that, and that was part of their market value they went to with Google when they just bought out the other day. Okay. Yes.
Howard, I was just thinking maybe expanding on economic value.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in an enterprise and you're building data products that gets used by other communities internally. You don't necessarily have revenue, but you can quantify value in things like a revenue uplift.
Yeah. Sorry. So just as you, so as you did that, this was one that I missed out. I didn't go to this business process optimization. So I have looked at it. I'm desperate to try to get some numeric measures. This is where they brought in value engineering, and they've got the three components: the process effectiveness, risk, and success factors. And these are the things that you're referring to: time savings, working on many systems to complete the task, consolidation, your master data, attract new clients, cost-effective, competitiveness. So there's actually some nice papers in terms of how to put these numbers together on all these different areas. And certainly that would come together, as you rightly say, Yolanda. I gave a couple there, but it would be helpful to flesh all of those. So basically, all of those 21, I think there's a total of 12 plus 4, so that's 9. So there's 21 measurements there. I just didn't put those. I just put 3 of them in this area, and you can see my numbers are 0 at the moment. I haven't got any data that I'm collecting right now.
Yeah.
But what you can do is there's a drop down to say, competitiveness, increase in profits, new opportunities that we identified with machine learning, new innovative products. So those are the type of things that you want to try to bring into that cost reduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have got in my reference data thing, these are all the measures. So you can add measures to this, and then it improves your metric drop down, where you can basically collect any data that you need on that area over there. Is that what you?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
Cool. Is that similar to the way you guys were thinking about it?
We're still very early days, but we've definitely picked up some brilliant things today to introduce.
Nice. I'd love some. I mean, I think we can all benefit from knowing how to measure it and knowing, because we all got different areas. But I think it's just how, because I haven't really run to the end. I've never really got to the end, so I don't have any experience to say this really works or doesn't work. So I've got the structure, but it's that living document thing of now let's go and try it, and hopefully with the KSA, they'll be trying it faster than me, and I can do some learning.
Yeah.
It's a bit hard when you're an advisor to say, you must do it like this.
Yes, I know. I'm in your shoes. I'm thinking of a potential next order of valuation.
Yeah.
Because what you have here is you have the value chain to create one data product. If we think about the analogy of manufacturing and the manufacturing value chain, where so I tell the story of wine production.
Right.
There's the manufacturing of grapes. That has a value chain.
Yes.
Then there might be totally a new entity that buys grapes and makes the juice.
Yes.
And in each of those, one person's output data product has a value to it, but becomes the input data product to the next person.
Right. 100%.
That drives new insights from that data product.
Yeah.
So on enterprise grade, want to be able to aggregate the value.
Yeah. So you write here, so you would be fitting in as a provider to data with value to this chain. So you got that, and I think the business architecture talks about that in terms of a network map of providers that are connecting with each other, and you got that sort of downstream, or whether you could bring all of this together, that would be an exciting exercise.
Absolutely.
I suppose for someone like Bidvest, where they've got people doing cleaning, people doing kitchens, and if they bring it all together, that would be amazing to see that almost the whole ecosystem. Yeah.
Definitely.
Nice. Yeah.
Very exciting.
And I think what this is sort of what, if we think of the kingdom, the Saudi Arabia, what they're doing is they're demanding that each ministry contributes data to their open data that contributes to the economy. So what they'll then be doing is to say, what is the economic impact of all this data that you're sharing? What's the economic impact to the kingdom? And so that they'd have to know how to aggregate that value and connect all of those chains together. Good. Alrighty. Any other questions? Okay, Paul, over to you.
Stuff. Thanks, Howard. Excellent. Thanks for all the questions as well. And just remember, if something keeps you up tonight, Howard's always ready on the guns on LinkedIn. So
I actually had a session with Andeli at 5 o'clock this morning. He had to do a presentation on his new master data architecture. It's like, Howard, I need some help.
Yeah, exactly. You see, so just say that I need some help, and then Howard will
happy to share if you
happy to share. But yeah, seriously, wait for the adverts or the commentary from off the post commentary on Tuesday, and then happy to share the link on request. And remember, at the end of the cycle, all the slides will be available as well. So great to see everybody, and have a wonderful break next few days. Bit of a long weekend, and happy holidays. And see you all next Thursday. Be safe.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Paul.
cheers.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
No, but thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.